I was initially planning on doing some cosmetic work today, but it's freezing outside again, so that takes working with the paint or vinyl out of the equation. Just a perk of being a car enthusiast in a location that snows. And to add to that, shipping is slow, so my next large mods aren't even here yet. But since we have this time, I thought it would be a great idea to look back and go over a list of mods that I thought made the biggest difference on my car over the course of the past year. In case you're wondering, this is a TT225, meaning it comes stock with a KO4 turbo, a 6-speed manual transmission, and a Haldex all-wheel drive system. Before modifying your car in any way, a pre-tune checklist is one of the most important things you can do. I'd consider this the most important thing you do when you pick up the car. You want to go through your vacuum lines, your diverter valves, and all your gaskets to make sure you don't have any leaks that are going to affect performance. In other words, you want to get your car sorted before you modify it. There's this huge misconception that modified cars are unreliable, and I don't think that should be true. If you build a house on a shaky foundation, you're going to have a bad time. Similarly, if you tune and modify your car with 20-year-old bushings and stock vacuum lines, seals, etc., those will be the weak points when compared to the shiny new parts you slap on. So get your car sorted before you modify it. For the 1.8T, the main concerns you'll need to check are vacuum lines. There's a plethora of these that tend to leak, as well as valve cover gaskets, old plastic diverter valves that are being taxed with boost, cracks in the coolant flanges, among other 20-year-old plastic parts. All in all, these aren't too expensive to fix, and when you do, it'll be highly worth it. Your car will be notably more reliable and you'll have to worry about it a lot less down the road. My first official mod that I think made the biggest difference was specifically the tune. This car came stock with 225 horsepower from the factory, which was fantastic for the time. But the past 20 years haven't been the kindest to this car, and the previous owner seemed to let some of the horses run away. Tuning the car changes the ECU parameters, and more specifically, the mapping of the car, which allows for more boost to be generated by the turbo before activating the wastegate. Since my car comes stock with a KO4 and twin intercoolers, I can run a different tune than people with the 180 version of this car. There's a range of companies that make an affordable off-the-shelf tune. Some of these include APR, Revo, etc. The tunes generally come in stages which correspond to the other supporting mods you have. So be sure to read the requirements before purchasing a specific tune for your car. If your car has a bunch of supporting mods and you want to maximize the gains of each of these, what you can do is get a custom tune. For this car, I worked with a company called Motaza, and they sent me a remote tuning cable. I connected this cable to my laptop and did a few road pulls and logged the data. I sent it over to them, they modified the map of the car, and we exchanged these files back and forth a few times. Their goal was to maximize the efficiency of my system given the mods that I currently had installed. When this was all said and done, I rode dynoed at around 256 wheel horsepower and 280 wheel torque. This is a notable increase. A tune is a fantastic way to improve your car's performance and is by far and away the best horsepower per dollar mod you can get. Fair warning though, and this is something I can't stress enough, tuning puts a lot of pressure on your diverter valve, which is something you will want to upgrade at the same time you tune. It's a cheap modification that will dramatically affect your performance if it goes out, so make sure you replace it. The second modification I can't recommend enough is the rear sway bar. The biggest downside of owning the Mark 1 TT is that the stock suspension isn't exactly the best. The car handles great, but since it's both older suspension technology and just an old suspension in general, it's pretty soft, and that leads to a bunch of body roll and understeer at the limits. Since this is a front-heavy car which understeers, the best thing you can do to improve the feel and neutralize the understeer, in this type of car specifically, is to upgrade the rear sway bar. There are a few brands you can go with, but I specifically like H&R for this kind of a suspension mod. It's affordable and it works. Stiffening the rear portion of this car changes the driving dynamics immensely. First and foremost, you'll notice that it almost entirely eliminates the body roll. This makes you a much more confident driver and makes the car feel way more secure going through a corner. In other words, the rear sway bar is a cheap way to help alleviate the tendency to understeer by stiffening the rear and at the same time removing the body roll that comes with the factory suspension. This helps with road feel and makes the car night and day more fun to drive. You'll feel more connected, you'll drive better, and it'll be a whole lot more fun. The next most notable mod that I found was my short shifter and shifter bushing replacement. When you drive a manual transmission, the importance of knowing your shifter and being able to accurately and rapidly shift gears cannot be understated. You literally can't do anything in the car without shifting. This car comes with the 02M 6-speed Volkswagen gearbox. This is a cable-based system which has a plethora of bushings which decay over time, making finding the gears difficult. A company called Diesel Geek sells a kit to replace all all of these, and I highly recommend it. It's cheap and it works wonders. While you're in here, I suggest you add a configurable short shifter and solid cable end links to your system. This will dramatically reduce the shift throw you have, as well as reducing the shift slop when picking a gear. I'm running an adjustable CTS turbo short shifter kit, and on the least aggressive setting, I removed almost 2.5 inches off my throw distance. And to add to that, my shifts are so incredibly crisp now that I can't even compare it to the factory setup. This leads to the ability to shift the car with much more confidence, and consequently to shift the car much faster. This car is 20 years old, but this modification made the transmission feel comparable to something much newer. The shifting mechanism is also something in the car that you're going to engage with all the time, so the better it is, the more enjoyment you're going to get from the drive. The next most important modification I did to this car was the downpipe. The 225 comes stock with one of the most restrictive downpipes I have ever seen. Let me paint a picture for you. Straight off the turbo, there's a 3-inch outlet. Almost right after this outlet, this pipe splits into 2 single-inch downpipes, which mate all the way to twin catalytic converters. Now, if I remember back from my fluid mechanics class, this is a pretty inefficient way to do this. This is going to add a lot of back pressure to the turbo. Consequently, the best option in the aftermarket scene is to replace this with a single 3-inch pipe. Due to the nature of the stock downpipe, this is one of the most annoying jobs you can do to the Audi. If you're trying to force extra air through the turbo and you have the stock downpipe, you're just going to create a ton of back pressure and consequently stress the turbo even more. After you install the aftermarket downpipe, however, oh boy. You'll notice your turbo spools faster, sounds better, and holds boost a lot steadier. For me, the difference was so apparent that it made my car feel less like it was going to explode. And I can't stress how good of a feeling that is. Not to mention, your downpipe dramatically helps your exhaust note too. Generally speaking, these downpipes come with either a test pipe, which eliminates the catalytic converters, or a high flow catalytic converter, which just helps the flow rate. The next 2 mods I'm suggesting are going to be ones I suggest you do at the same time, and that'll make more sense after I explain them. The first of these is an air intake. The 1.8Ts love airflow, and I really love this mod for turbo cars. While there's a lot of disagreement on the benefits, or lack thereof, for gaining power, I think this is one of the best sounding and looking upgrades for your engine bay. Anytime you're under throttle, you can hear the intake noise, which is addicting. And when you're unboost and let off throttle, or throwing the clutch, you hear the stereotypical whoosh and ping from the diverter valve and turbo system, which is intoxicating. It literally just makes you want to get into boost and let off, get into boost and let off, just to hear the noise over and over again. In theory, this mod will increase the intake air coming into the turbo by reducing the resistance needed to pull new air into the system. When this increase in intake air is passed through the turbo, ideally to an increase of outflow air from a downpipe and exhaust, you have a much freer flowing turbo system that can run higher boost and a tune configured specifically for this added airflow. If you're just running an aftermarket intake, you're not going to notice much other than the sound. But if you combine this with an increase of output air after the turbo, i.e. a downpipe and an exhaust, you're going to notice that you have a much freer flowing turbo system. Your turbo is going to spool a lot faster, and it's going to be a lot healthier for it in the long run. Not to mention, when you have this many mods, you can get a custom tune that is configured specifically for this added airflow. This custom tuning will take advantage of these types of mods and can add even more horsepower. You've probably guessed it by now, but my final recommendation for an initial mod is an exhaust. It's pretty much a fact that when a car sounds good, you enjoy it more. There's something carnal and satisfying behind pushing the throttle and hearing an audible response that is pleasing. The better the sound, the better the enjoyment of the car. Most people think that exhausts are generally just a way to make your car sound better, but there's actually quite a bit of merit to back up the fact that they help with performance too. When combined with an intake and a downpipe, you reduce the pressure on the turbo immensely. This allows you to speed up timing and make a much more aggressive tune that takes advantage of this lack of pressure on the turbo. Since you're running more boost and have a freer flowing system, your car is going to perform a lot better, and it's going to be a ton more fun to drive. I can pretty much promise you that any single one of these mods will make your car more enjoyable to you. Modifying your car is a great way to bolster your mechanical knowledge. It's also really cool to see that the work you put into a car can make it that much more enjoyable. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Next week, when shipping is kind and we have some new parts, along with the fact that hopefully it won't be 20 degrees, we're going to install some new parts on the TT and continue turning our project car into something great. If you liked this video, learned something, or wanted to watch me build some project cars, consider subscribing to the channel or liking the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.